Composability.dev 2022. I appreciate you for having me. I go by the name of J Dash. Thank you for loaning me your time for a few minutes. I promise I'm going to pay it back with interest. We're going to dive into it. For a few minutes, we're going to talk a little bit about you being a rock star and everything that means and everything that could mean. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set the vibe. I want you to close your eyes. Closed? All right, cool. So you're the child version of yourself, right? You're laying in the grass in the middle of a field. It's a sunny day. It's beautiful outside. And then you see, like, in the sky, you see the fluffiest white clouds that you've ever seen in your life. Now think about what it would be like to touch one of those clouds. To be up there laying in that cloud. Now remember that feeling right there. Hold it. Now keeping your eyes closed, we're going to switch. Imagine you're an adult, waking up in the morning, getting ready for work. You slept for an ungodly amount of hours and yet somehow you're still tired. Side note, I don't think anybody ever told us, like, one day you're an adult and you'd wake up feeling a little tired and that feeling would just stay forever. Anyway, you get ready, you grab some coffee, get your keys, you head to the car, you open the garage, and it's the foggiest day that you've ever seen in your life. I mean, you couldn't see a hand if it slaps you in the face. And you know what that drive is going to be like. I want you to hold on to that feeling. You've got the juxtaposition of those two feelings, right? When I was young, I used to stare at the sky and dream about what it would be like to touch a cloud. And I wonder at what point I was taught that fog is mundane and nothing more than a decrease in visibility. Think about that. I believe a friend of mine, Jonathan Sprinkles, said it better. He said, "What age did you learn to be small?" Who is controlling the size of those thoughts? And fog is just a cloud that's brought down to earth. So my goal today is to change the way that you think about what it is that you do. Now, open your eyes if they're still closed. We've gone through our warm-up. I'm going to give you a quick intro, maybe a few spoilers, and then we'll get into money, power, and respect and what that actually means for you. First off, my name's Jamel Johnson. I also go by J Dash. Started out as a .NET developer. Got tired of doing that like standalone work, like desktop app work. Went into Java, learned Python, became the UX architect at a company called CSX in Jacksonville. Learned Angular, AWS. Now I'm in Austin, Texas, working at a company called Everly Health. Do a lot of stuff with Contentful and React and Gatsby, and also learning Svelte, and I think Remix is up next. Who knows? I'm just trying to learn all the things. I'm not the greatest dev by any means. I'm like a third round draft pick when it comes to development. That's how I kind of see myself. I think, you know how, like, have you ever seen an ugly baby? That's how I am about my code. It's like, I probably know I have an ugly baby, but it's precious, right? You know, anyway, sorry. Moving on. I'm also known as J Dash. Again, multi-platinum artist, producer, songwriter, award-winning film composer. I'm a national advocate for music education. I travel with the NAMM Foundation every year, talk to congressmen and senators about music education and financing that. I'm an active board member of Moon Ultra, Rise Child Development Center, Make Music Count, so on and so forth. I also do a lot of sync licensing, meaning I put music in TV and film. So if you look at that image down there on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see some of the shows that my music has been in. Cool. All right. Now that that's out the way, I got a few spoilers for you. You are a successful business, but you need more employees. It's time to scale. Now, I have a quote on each one of these spoilers. It's one of my favorites. No one can whistle a symphony. It takes a whole orchestra to play it. Second spoiler, just because something is satisfactory doesn't make it fair. And another quote from Harvey McKay, you don't get what you want, you get what you negotiate. Last spoiler, developers that write unicorn code deserve life-changing amounts of money. Truly believe that. Let's talk about why. We're going to step away from tech for a second. We're going to talk about this guy. We're going to talk about money, but we're going to talk about this guy named Dev Loper. Now, Dev grew up playing basketball, developed his talent via hard work over decades. He starts getting noticed by some teams. Agents start calling with the "I can make you lots of money" talk. They offer to help build his career for a small percentage of his income. He signs the deal, and things start to take off. Now, picture your favorite athlete and your favorite sport. If you don't have one, think of the largest athlete that you know you've ever heard of, right? Baseball, basketball, cricket, football, whichever version of football, gaming, doesn't matter. In order to make those people's names as large as they are, it took more people. Parents, coaches, trainers, teammates, community, managers, agents, your own experience, etc., etc., etc. But it's not just sports. What about visual artists? What about actors? What about rock stars? What do all of these journeys have in common? They do more than what's asked of them, willing to fail in order to succeed, make changes instead of being affected by them, lifelong learners, etc., etc., etc. More excited about the journey than the payout, right? But what we can say in all of these cases is that in order to enjoy optimal success in your career, you need more people around you focused on the growth of your career. So, let's talk about the actual success team necessary to make Mr. Loper the superstar that he is. And all of these people represent what's in the best interest of him. So you have an agent, somebody that's responsible for contract negotiations, public relations, networking, analytics. You might have a trainer, somebody who's, really keeping an eye on his performance, collecting data, creating a curriculum for him to continue to train to be better, following trends, watching his health. And you have his manager, who's responsible for media relations and financial planning, branding, philanthropy. And you even have his community that are there for brand support, his fans, marketing, all of that stuff. All of those people are there around Mr. Loper, right? Then you have people that are representing the best interest of the organization that Mr. Loper works for, the team. You have the owners that are responsible for making the organization profitable. You have coaches that are responsible for the team performance and the game plan. You have staff. These people ensure the organization runs smoothly day to day. Then you have his teammates, the people that work with him to deliver results to the organization. Starting to sound familiar yet? All right, let's talk high level still about his career. Now, he kind of got off to a rocky start, rookie year, gets to learn from some legends, became a team leader, got traded to a different team, immediately started adding value to that team based on his experience, led that team to a championship, and then exercised some performance-based incentives. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen an NBA or an NFL contract. They have what's called exhibits. Basically, these things that say, if I win this many games, I'm going to get a $2 million bonus or whatever. We get to the championship, I get this much. And they're based on the stats and they're based on how far the team goes together. So how much value did Mr. Loper bring to Team 1? And how much of that did he leave behind when he went to Team 2? Think about that for a second. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's a great, metaphor, but I don't really play sports at all. Good point. Fine. I'll feed you, baby birds. Here's a question. Are you quantifying your code's value? I'll ask it again. Are you quantifying your code's value? If so, how are you doing that? You may be asking me, well, what's the benefit? Or how do I do that? Heard it before. Here's the deal. What you're trying to get is leverage. Here's a surefire way to start to build some leverage at your organization, wherever you are. Discover the KPIs or the key performance indicators of your company, their objectives. Align that with the roadmap. So align those objectives with your team's roadmap and your upcoming tasks as much as you possibly can. Measure those things. So using tools like Mixpanel, Google Analytics, VWO, etc., etc. Measure the results of what it is that you and your team are doing and report them. Report how they tie directly into those KPIs. So what are some of the common KPIs that you can tie your code to? Some common KPIs are, and here's the deal, I've separated these things into kind of an increasing side and a decreasing side. So things that you want to increase, the CVR, the conversion rate, and that's the percentage of users who saw your thing, interacted with it, and converted through some pre-specified action, right? You go from view of your thing into purchase of your widget or whatever. User engagement. Now this could be daily active users, monthly active users, stickiness, which is like daily active users divided by the monthly active users, the number of sessions per user, average session duration, number of actions per session. That's how you measure that stuff. LTV, or the lifetime value. This is the prediction of the net profit from the entire future relationship of a customer or with a customer. Organic traffic, unpaid traffic from search results. Virality, which is the viral coefficient, which is the average number of invitations sent by an existing user times the conversion rate of invitation, right? Now, the things that you want to decrease, the CAC, which is the customer acquisition cost, the bounce rate, which is the rate in which visitors come to your website and leave without any interactions or clicks, your monthly churn rate, which is the lost customers per month divided by the prior month total, the dev cycle time, which is the period of time from an engineer's first commit to the deployment of the code, and then the sales cycle time. So if you can decrease the repeatable and tactical process that salespeople follow to turn a lead into a customer, beautiful. All of these things make you look good. So this slide may look familiar. First, we were talking about Dev Loper's career, right? Now we're talking about your career. Probably got off to a little bit of a rocky start. Got to learn from some legends. Maybe you became a team leader, got traded to a different team where you immediately started adding value based on your experience. You led that team to several wins. Maybe you have some performance-based incentives. You guys got a bonus because the company performed so well based on the work that you guys are doing, right? How much value did you bring to Team 1? Now, in Dev Loper's case, when he gets traded, he leaves that team. And everything that he brought to that team, other than whatever mentality he left the players there, leaves with him. He takes his talent, he takes his work ethic, he takes all of that to Team 2, right? But when you leave Team 1 and you go to Team 2, everything that you built for Team 1 stays there. And that means the value that you added to Team 1 also stays there. So you're basically like cloning yourself or cloning your value, because as long as that thing is active, whatever value it was bringing continues to bring value even when you're gone. Keep that in mind. All right. Who has the power? We're going to talk about IP, and I'm not talking about IP addresses. We're going to talk about something I'm a little closer to personally, and that's intellectual property. So what is intellectual property? Intellectual property is something that someone has thought of or created. This could be designs, processes, songs, logos, code, whatever. And it belongs to the person that created it. And that person gets to decide how it's made and who can profit from it. The thing that makes something IP is that it exists as an artifact. So an idea is not intellectual property, but as soon as you record it, say you record it in your iPhone, or you commit some code or you just type it out, as soon as it's an artifact that can be copied, it is intellectual property. So how does intellectual property work in, say, the music business? Right now, we're going to break down a record deal. Now, this still involves people making business deals with their intellectual property, right? The people are treated as a business. All right, let's break this down in a way that we can understand it. $1 is generated when I get X amount of streams on, say, Spotify. Of that dollar, 58.25 cents is sound recording income. The record label takes a piece of that. What I'm left with is 16%, which is 9.32 cents. Now, without diving into the particulars of how performance royalties work or mechanicals and stuff like that, know that outside of the income generated by the sound recording, of which I am paid by the record label, we'll call that a salary, the actual intellectual property is generating other types of income, and it's doing that forever. So I deserve to get paid for that, right? At the end of the day, regardless of the type of intellectual property, there should always be an agreement in place that specifically talks about who owns what and for how long. Now, you may be asking, who would even sign up for this? Now, for all intents and purposes, for the next part of this conversation, I'll refer to a business and a developer separately. As a business, if you are a business, you may be asking, well, what if I don't have this agreement with my developers? Well, without an agreement, the intellectual property defaults to copyright law. And while the receiver, you, the business, may have an implied license, the creator is still the owner. Now, copyright law is kind of weak when it comes to code, because basically you can just rewrite it in another language. And there you have it. The idea isn't protected, but the copy is. So what I'm talking about kind of seems like one super high level and a large change. Like, how do you even get the conversation started around enforcing something like this? Would you be paid less? Like, what if I renegotiated my salary to be less and then I get a percentage of some widgets I write or whatever? Would I get like paid less ultimately? Doesn't this grossly overcomplicate things? Is another question. The answer can be found in the fact that there are multi-billion-dollar open source companies, which means big companies don't have your specific expertise. That's why they hire you in the first place, right? The customer, who are the businesses in this case, want to buy from the person who wrote the code. And customers don't want vendor lock-in. So this is already happening. So if you are an employee of a company, you, one, don't usually have intellectual property rights, meaning you sign an agreement at the beginning of your term of employment that turns all of your IP over to your employer, and you are treated as a work for hire. That's when you have none. Now, there are some cases where, as a part of your compensation, you receive shares of stock, which equates to a tiny fraction of that company's overall value. It's ownership, right? But it's not necessarily tied to the work that you're doing. It's just, if the company wins, you win. Now, in smaller businesses, a lot of startups and mid-size, as a part of your compensation, you receive options to buy shares of the company for a fraction of what you hope the company is worth. Now, in all these cases, you probably get a decent salary, probably are satisfied with what you're getting, But going back to that second spoiler of satisfaction doesn't necessarily mean things are fair, right? Okay. Now, what's happening with a lot of contractors, it's a bit different. Now, contractors don't receive employer benefits or ownership in that particular company per se, but they do exercise an interesting model in a lot of cases, which is they have background IP and project IP. Background IP is contractor owned, meaning it's licensed by the company that employs them and it's able to be reused. So basically, they make some foundational algorithms or logic that they say it doesn't just work for this company, it works for a whole bunch of companies, and they license that and they continue to make money off of it. Then you have the project IP, which is developed by the contractor as well, but it's owned by the company and it's able to be reused, or it's unable to be reused, sorry. In both cases, both parties can exercise pragmatic control of what they own. What is pragmatic control? Like if I own a car, but it's in somebody else's garage, I don't have pragmatic control over that car, right? So businesses should own whatever accounts for the IP that they own in their name. That could be hosting, code repos, yada, yada, yada. Just make sure you own your stuff. Also make sure that you can leave when necessary. All right, so what are the big ideas here? What if recruiters were working for the wrong people? I'm sure you get contacted on LinkedIn by recruiters all the time. What if, because they're working for companies and have the company's best interest at heart, what if we went more towards that sports model where recruiters had your interest at heart? What if you had somebody acting on your behalf, negotiating your salary, negotiating your performance-based incentives, and your tailored benefits? Something that most of us don't do very well, if at all. What if they were coordinating with trainers to roadmap your career specifically and associated curriculum for your growth? What if you were able to get additional revenue endorsing products that you already use, open source tools, whatever? These companies want to get out there. They want to do it by word of mouth. Why not you? And why shouldn't you be compensated for it? Also, infrastructure. The automation and activation of these performance-based incentives, tools for brand management. There's so many opportunities to actually grow in this space. It's brand new. So what if there was, some Web3 tool, some smart contract to activate incentives based on inputs that are automatically generated, read, and interpreted? So that way, when your widget hit a specific critical mass, you just started getting a royalty from it, from that conversion rate, from that decrease in customer acquisition cost. What if you were paid for that forever? Automated IP administration. Web3 presents an opportunity to renegotiate the traditional working relationship. Now, this is not going to be a talk about Bitcoin or Ethereum or, NFTs, but the benefits of a trustless relationship between employer and employee in perpetuity can't be ignored. So here we go. There are 5 million developers in the United States alone, about 27 million around the world, each one contributing a significant amount of intellectual property to several organizations and thinking that they can only take the values of their experiences with them. Now I'm gonna go back to the original slide where I said when I was young, I used to stare at the sky and dream about what it would be like to touch a cloud. And I wonder at what point I thought that fog is mundane and nothing more than a decrease in visibility. More personally, when I was young, I used to stare at the screen and dream about what it would be like to change lives. And I wonder at what point I was taught that code was mundane and nothing more than a job. My goal today was to change the way that you thought about what you do. You have the ability to change the lives of your users and the owners of the companies that you work for. Now, before I get out of here, I have some shameless plugs. My wife told me that I had to work on my work-life balance, so I spent 2 weeks building a work-life balance calculator called Scales, just so I could learn Svelte. Now, I'd call that a twofer. She called me an Uber, so there's that. The company I work for, I have to plug them, everlywell.com. It's digital healthcare designed for you. Your body doesn't come with a user manual. And we want you to learn as much about your body as you possibly can. So sign up, go get some tests. Moon Ultra, I'm on the board, featured on The Ellen Show, one of Time Magazine's top inventions of 2020. We got Make Music Count, featured on TNT's The Game Plan with Shaquille O'Neal and Big Boy from Outkast. It actually teaches kids how to do math better by learning scales on the piano. I'd call that a win-win. Last but not least, my goal is to make 25 millionaires by 2025. So if you want to learn more about how to do that, sign up today, devage.com. We'll talk more. All right. That being said, follow me on all the socials, The Real J Dash. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you for listening to my speech and everything that I had to say. Composability.dev is the greatest thing ever. Y'all keep coming back. All right. Peace.
Hey, thank you so much for watching that. I really hope you got value from it. By the way, if you want more where that came from, go to composability.dev and register to be a part of our community today. And if you want to be even more part of our community, go to Twitter and look up JavaScript Jam and follow us. Every Wednesday, we go live at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we talk about anything and everything web dev. It's an open mic for everybody, whether you're a beginner, whether you've been doing this forever. We'd love to hear from everybody, and there's always so much value and good conversation going on there. We wanted you to be a part of it too, so come join us. And by the way, if you left a comment below, that's exactly where the comments are going to be answered during the live Q&As with the speakers. JavaScript Jam live on Twitter Spaces. All right, go to JavaScript Jam. Do it now. Follow us. All right, see you soon.